Can you all hear me? Yes. Whoa, there's like 3 rows of people. It's pretty cool. I'm going to do something pretty unconventional today. I've only done this once before, which is that I don't have any slides. And instead, I am just going to take you through Unity, take you through maybe my email, if that's what you guys want to see, all the tools that I use, maybe some platform things. I don't know. We'll see. We'll end up somewhere, I'm sure. Oh, this looks great. Yeah, let's see if we can change that. It should just work out of the box. There's some buttons here that are scary. Oh, wait, I know why this is. Boop. Okay, wait for it. There we go. All right. So yeah, my name is. Give it a second. At the same time, I can open up my browser here. Yes. So my name is Adriaan de Jongh. Like Eline told, I'm a game designer. I used to make Fingle, which was an awkward finger rubbing game. I made Bounden after that together with Game Oven, that Eline also worked on, a mobile dancing game where 2 people hold on to the same phone and they dance together. But my latest game is called Hidden Folks. I'm just going to see if this works. And just so you get an idea of it. Oh. So yes, it's a black and white game where you have to search things, and there's a bunch of mouth sounds. Oh, some artifacts. So that's Hidden Folks. Oh wait. That's great. So that's by far my favorite sound. It took me 3 years to make Hidden Folks. I made it together with a guy called Sylvain Tegroeg. He's the illustrator, and together he is the illustrator and me doing everything else. We worked on this game for 3 years, and now to sort of like give you idea what that means. 3 years of working. So far, we've already worked on the game, and this is not even including the last couple months, more than 4,500 hours on this game. That's a lot of hours. Anyway, I was going to show you this in a little second, because, okay, the whole idea of my talk here today, it might feel a little bit chaotic, but there is a point to it, because I want to show you the entire content process and sort of the thoughts behind making Hidden Folks, from paper to Steam binary, if you want to say it like that. I have a couple ideas about design, like design is making things with a goal in mind, or design is practical. It's sort of like married to the tools you have and to the way you program things. But it's also doing, and it's not really thinking. And sometimes, and today, I will actually sometimes show you code and show you certain tools, because I really believe that's part of the game design. And we've already seen that with Roel, who was just here, who was showing all his tools. That's really the way you can do game design. That's what I believe as well. But don't let like programming or tools scare you, because I've just hacked it together, right? Any of you could do it. But I also believe that design is very context specific. So all the very specific things that we thought about with Hidden Folks will probably only apply to Hidden Folks. And so my goal here today is not necessarily to like give you all the cool tricks. My goal here today is really to sort of like inspire you to see that, you know, we don't really know what we're doing either, and that we're sort of like hacking this together and seeing what works. but also our dedication to playtesting and try to figure out how it works, our curiosity, so to speak. So back to this overview. Let's see if we can increase the size here a little bit. Hinfolks started in 2014, and the first version took me, let's see, an estimated amount of 12 hours. It's not a lot. In total, I think there have been sort of like 4 versions. One of them, like 4 actual vertical slices in which Sylvain and I really collaborated together. The first one was in November 2015. The second one was in March, after sort of a crunch where we showed it at the Game Developer Conference in San Francisco and talked to journalists and talked to platform holders like Apple. Then another version came in August, where we showed it at Gamescom. And then another version happened in February, which was the release date. So February 15th is when Hinfolks released on iOS, Steam, PC, Linux, and Apple TV. Now, a couple of things before I switch over to Unity, which I guess I should just open up now while it loads. From the very start, it was very clear what Hinfolks was going to be. I had seen Sylvain's work at his graduation expo. He had these little frames with these miniature worlds. I was immediately intrigued by them. And I saw that, and I jokingly told him, hey, we should make a game together based on his artwork. And I think I just recently found a screenshot of the first email I sent him where I was like, hey, maybe we should work on this together. Hey, Sylvain, I met you and saw your work at Rietveld, and I felt like I wanted to help you make a game out of it. It feels really like I'm using him, but that's what I look back at it now. Offered to make a prototype, see whether we can make something fun out of this. So that was sort of like how this project started. And from that point on, we tried to figure out together how can we make a game out of this stuff that you make, that you can draw. He's very good at drawing. But how can we make it interactive? How can we make a game out of it? And so, to give you a little sense, an idea of what that's like, first Sylvain draws things on paper, and then he puts it into things called Sprite Sheets. Now, you have probably seen Sprite Sheets before, but I'm just going to show you the kind of Sprite Sheets that he makes. So every single item on this thing he drew on paper, and he scanned it in, and he put it in Photoshop himself. He doesn't use any tools or something to put this together, so he puts it in Photoshop and squashes everything together. Then we throw it into Unity, where we load it as a sprite sheet. And this takes a long time, and he does this a lot, where we actually go into this sprite sheet, draw a rectangle over every single object, give it a name, and then it's only usable, right? So we haven't done anything with it. It's just like an object we can now actually drag into the game. So that's a whole process to figure out like what's the quality, how do we get it from paper to game. So that's like a very first step. What happens then is the following. Then we make these scenes, and all the scenes are manually made. And by that I mean Sylvain actually sits down, and I sit down, and we drag one by one all these objects in. And every object we position it, but not only do we position it, we also layer it. So 2D is of course 2D. So he draws something on paper, there's no depth to it. But every time he draws an object in, you also have to sort it. And I built a bunch of very simple tools for him to do that. And there, as you can see, the tools thing is now lighting up. That's because I'm pressing a couple of keys on my keyboard. This is sort of like a hack that I put together. There's a set render order, and there's some magic here, which sort of helps Sylvain, when he drags it into the editor, he's able to, after dragging it in, say, okay, I want this a little bit forward, a little bit backward. So he does this manually, and for a small scene like this, that looks pretty doable. But then there's also these kinds of scenes, which are slightly bigger. So yeah, everything in there is dragged in manually. This took us a whole month. It took him a whole month to drag in every single object. And to give you also a sense of how many objects there are in here, there is almost 20,000 objects in here. So he dragged every... Let me just show you how this works. Because, see here, this little fucking piece of paper... he literally like... This is what Sylvain does, right? Thanks. This is what Sylvain does. So it probably all started when he dragged one of these boxes in here and he started duplicating them around and sorting them one by one. But after that, he saw, oh, this thing needs a paper, and he drags this paper in, and then he sorts it like that, and now it's done. So that's sort of like step one. So we can now put his visuals in Unity in the game, but of course it's not interactive from that. So this is sort of like where it starts. Lots of work. It's just a lot of labor, if you want to call it like that. But what he also does is that we have a couple of scenes in which Sylvain just drops a lot of stuff, and they're really meant for me, so that I can do something with it. Because me, as the game designer, I've built a bunch of scripts, which I will talk about in depth here. I've built a bunch of scripts that allow me to make things interactive. And so he, in this very particular scene, he put these two umbrellas, one is open and one is closed, in the scene. And then I've built a script that, in this case, and if you look, can you guys read this just a little bit? Is it okay? Yeah, okay, sort of okay. There's a bunch of components on the right, which are, in this case, a trigger sprite swap and a trigger sound. So the moment you press on one of those things, it will swap the image and it will make a sound. It's really as simple as that. Now, every interaction in Hidden Folks is sort of made on this principle. On this principle of trigger behaviors. And it's a sort of component-based system. Now, that's all like technical talk here. But what it means is that you can sort of add components as much as you want. You can add little pieces of code to it, and every component will just add more behavior to it. So one thing can play a sound, another thing can make it something that's draggable, another thing will change the sprite, another thing will start an animator. And so I've made, well, actually, let's just see how many I've made. I've made a lot of these things. There's a lot of little components that do very simple things. Here's one that's called move on sinus. It's really that simple, and all you have to do is add that component here, move on sinus, and now it will move on a sinus. That's sort of like the tool that I had to make it interactive. And writing all these little trigger components, that took me maybe 2 years. If you look at all these components. But it started as one little script that we added to something, and then I gradually built it up. And so every trigger is actually also has a little collider on it, and there's all sorts of fun stuff. I have like one interaction manager that like checks which collider you're hitting, and then it will trigger all those things. And actually, if you're more interested in how that works, trigger, where is that? Yeah, here's all my trigger behaviors. There's like 3 functions it uses. There's like, you can do something when you press down. You can do something when you press up. And you can do something when there's a quick tap. So that means that if you have tapped just quick enough, but also haven't moved while you tap, then it's registered as a quick tap. And so these 3 sort of events, that's what triggers can get. And that's something that I can use when I want to make things interactive. So that's like the abstract idea. And like I said, I have a bunch of these. Yeah, I don't know if they're super interesting to see, but maybe we can actually look at some of the things here. Where is everything? Okay. Why is this? I haven't opened up this scene in ages. Oh, I know why. Okay, here we go. Okay, so in this case, when we're not tapping anything, it will show the generic poof. It will play a little generic poof sound. And in this case, it's apparently the same sound. But you can turn on and off the fire. Here you can have some bees. So you can see like this is all built on the same very simple component-based structure, right? I make a little script that just does something, and it can add as many as I want to them. And that goes from triggering little sprite swaps, making things roll, making things grow, making cow sounds, opening up things, tents, etc. So this is, from my perspective, how I make the game, right? But then, of course, there's another very important part to this, which is how do players look at all this? And how do these triggers that I've come up with and this structure that I've constructed over the last 3 years, how does it actually work? And there's actually a lot of design in it. I think most of the game design of Hinfolks is within that space. Now, let's see. I'm actually going to do something really funny, which is I'm going to open up another presentation from another time. GDC, playtesting, yay, we could totally do this. Well, you can even read all my notes with me. So what I wanted to show you is the following. Here we go. So, long time ago, I play tested Hinfolks for this very specific thing, which was that I wanted people to understand that they could drag open the garage door. There was a target that they had to find. It was behind the garage door. But people would never understand that they could drag it open. They would just tap it, but nothing would happen because, of course, they had to drag it. And I couldn't really figure this problem out. It took me a very long time. It was very obvious what the problem was, and people kept telling me, "Oh, you can open it, you can drag it to open. How could I know that? There should be something that tells me how to open it." So this trigger didn't really work, and I thought of a solution, which was add a little hand. And so I added this little hand, which clearly shows you, okay, here's something you can drag. And this worked really well, right? It solved the problem. But it also made it very boring, because everyone knows exactly what to do. I'm basically treating them like a small child that doesn't know anything. And people would play this, and it'd be like, ugh, I know exactly what to do, but any sense of discovery is gone. And so I went back to the drawing board, and I implemented a different kind of solution, which was that if you tap something that you're supposed to drag, it wiggles a little bit in the direction of where you can drag it. And this was exactly that kind of solution that I needed. And so almost every trigger in the game has a similar story like this, where something just didn't work. And I played this a lot, I thought about it a lot, I just tried a bunch of solutions. Some of them made the game more boring, and some of them just worked like a charm, like this one. And so every time someone presses the garage door now, they'll immediately understand, oh, it wiggles, maybe it's locked, or, whoop, and they drag it and it's open. It's great. So every trigger I have in the game has something like this. And so let's really quickly close that talk again. Yeah, so I make all the interactions like that. We play test them a lot, and then we sort of like copy paste them into the bigger areas. Let's open up some other things here. Here's a big city. Man, every time you see all these big images, you realize how much work has gone into them. This probably also took us 3 to 4 weeks. Now, something more about the interaction, because it's a little bit weird with Hinfolks that everything looks interactable, or doesn't look interactable, if you want to say it like that. Everything looks the same. You can't really differentiate something that you can touch with something that you cannot touch. And I'll just play the game here. Let's make sure it's not too loud. Yeah, that works well. So I can tap here and nothing happens. I can tap with these characters and nothing happens. But then there's this sign, which does do something. But then there's all these other things that don't do anything. So how do we work with this? Because it's actually really strange, and it can also be very frustrating for players to know that there's something they're supposed to do, but they have to tap 1,000 things to actually get to the point where they know what they can press on. And this is the exact problem that was very wrong with the very first version of Hidden Folks, where we only had a couple of interactive things, and people would be very frustrated with the level very quickly, right? They would basically, oh, whoops. They would basically look at this level and be like, oh, nothing is interactive. That sucks. And obviously, that was not the feeling that we wanted to have. And so, in our second version, we made an area, and I think I have a screenshot. Maybe I have the actual scene somewhere here as well. In this sort of like second version, and then I'm talking about the one that we made for GDC. Was it factory test? No. Oh, I think I had to remove this. Maybe it was called differently back then. Whatever. We made a very large factory in which a lot of things were actually interactive. As a matter of fact, so many things were interactive that when players would tap on something that wasn't interactive, they'd be like, oh, this game sucks, not everything's interactive. And of course, that's a big problem because having to make everything interactive, like it sort of tenfolds the amount of work that we have to put into it. And so that was also a problem. We just couldn't do that sort of physically. It would be too costly. And so in our third version, we actually found a solution to this problem, which is very simple if you think about it. Because what's the thing that we came up with? I showed you this small area before. This is a very small area, and I would actually be completely fine with showing this to players, just throwing them in here and letting them discover everything. So throwing them in this small level, forcing them to at least find a couple targets hidden behind some of the interactions I want you to know, that forces them to understand a couple of these interactions, and those very specific interactions we force people into will be the main interactions. So in this case, for instance, we have to find this guy who's hidden in plain sight. That's easy. But here's a bush. You'll eventually find it by tapping on the bush. Here's you can have monkeys throw out of the bush. And here is some other interactions. Sort of like these simple interactions are then the predecessors. Is that? Yeah, that's the right English word. For all the interactions that are in this scene here. So we throw people in, let them be desperate and frustrated in the very small area, which is doable, and then we throw them into the big area where they already sort of have an idea what they can tap on, and then here will be way less frustrating. And so that's sort of like a thing that we've discovered in the third version, and upon release, that was like, we put like all our eggs in that basket, trying to make sure that people we're always introduced to a couple of the interactions, the main interaction in the scene, and then we would present them with this giant, massive area in which they would totally get lost, but at least they would have some sort of idea which interactions to use. And then there was the hints. So as you might have seen in the game, if you tap on a target, for instance, this Kiki the monkey, you get a little hint. This hint is actually extremely important to the design of the game. Usually we start by making the area, making a bunch of stories, and then we add a bunch of targets to the game. And with that comes, by placing them, we also put them in a context and a little story, and we have to construct some sort of hint around that. And we actually came up with a lot of ways to add hints, and I think I made a whole spreadsheet of like all the different ways you can I think this is, I don't really use that often anymore. What's it called? Findable design cheat sheet. So there's a lot of ways you can actually hide targets. And this is all, again, just sort of like brainstorming together with Sylvain, how can we hide targets, but also like playtesting and talking to people, seeing what they said about, maybe it's fun to hide a target by, maybe there's a pig sound somewhere, you have to find something that a pig is looking for. Or you hear electricity somewhere running somewhere, and you have to find a target that really likes electricity. So there's a lot of ways. Targets hidden because there's a car that just drives by. Targets hidden behind a puzzle of interactions, which means you have to press this one thing, and then that opens up another thing, and then you can drag this thing, and then you can push that thing through. So there's a lot of ways, obviously, to hide things. But of course, the hints are one part of them. Actually, let's see. But let's also talk actually about the difficulty of targets. Because actually the difficulty of targets varies per player. And of course, some of them are very easy. For instance, this guy, it will just be a matter of minutes, seconds maybe even before you find him. But then there are harder ones which are very obscure maybe. And one example would be, for instance, the fact that you can tap on the bamboo to make a panda appear. That's definitely not the sound of a panda. But the difficulty in this actually varies a lot. And back for the first 3 versions, I believe, we used to have a system where there were like a bunch of targets required, and then were also a bunch of targets that were bonus targets, and we had to throw that out because it was just too hard to figure out which targets were easy enough to be required and which targets were hard enough to be bonus. And so we ended up with a system where you can find 5 more targets in this case, or X amount of targets before you can progress to the next area. By the way, people never, ever go to the next area without having found everything. I don't know what the hell that is, but for some reason, this whole mechanic works so incredibly well. Just people knowing that there's more stuff to find won't allow themselves to go to the next area. It's completely bizarre. But yeah, the clues. I want to talk about the clues because there's a lot of text in the game actually, and at this very moment there are a lot of translators working on the game because I'm working on an update with a bunch of people. Look, all these people are active. Isn't that crazy? There's a lot of text in the game that needs to be translated to 22 languages. And there are 220 people, and right now there's 6, helping me translate it to a lot of languages, which is really cool. Here's some things that people are working on. Look, this guy's writing right here. Isn't that pretty cool? I think the targets is what the hints is what differentiates hidden folks from a lot of other games, because the hints are sort of a little setup for a story, a little quirky little scenario that you read about before even finding the target, and then you start looking for these little stories in the scene. And so they're very important, and it's also very important that they're translated. But also, these clues, these hints, also have some design value to them, because they can point to a very specific location, or they can point to a smaller or larger area, or they can point to objects that are everywhere, and you're looking for one unique object. So again, there's a lot of thought behind this, and a lot of play testing. Again, we really had no idea sometimes whether a hint would be good or not. And actually, I think I can show you a video that someone sent me just yesterday or 2 days ago of a playtest. Here we go. Let's go there. And this is a guy playing the game, playtesting the new areas for me so that I could see whether the hints worked, whether all the interactions, all the stuff that he actually clicked on, whether they worked. This is very exciting for me, and sometimes people are also really funny and they talk to me. This guy is playtesting a bad game. And he played for an hour, something a little bit more than an hour, also talking to me. Let's see what he has to say. Playing with his girlfriend, I believe. And I just look at all this footage. I look at every single second of it, and I notice where he clicks, and I think about it, and I think, what's maybe that thing needs to be interactive, or maybe there needs to be another sound over there, or maybe he says something about oh, I wish I could click on these apples and let it fall out of the tree, and I'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna add that. And so I look at all this footage, hours and hours of footage, and I base all my decisions on these videos. And I actually have a lot of these videos.
What was the text part of it?
There's okra. It's been out for a while. His wheat is drying.
This was actually a very bad hint, and we changed it. I think also partly based on this video, because it took him ages to find this. Maybe he never found it. That's also a probability. So yes, very frustrating to watch, but also very necessary, and I learn a lot from this. I've given a lot more talks about playtesting. GDC, there's one. I highly recommend watching that one. If you go to YouTube and you search for playtesting, avoiding evil data, this is like a really sort of like focused talk of mine that's really about how to do playtesting well and how to make sure you don't get evil data, as I call it, data that helps you make your game worse. So yeah, check that out. Okay. So that's a little bit about making the levels and making the game. So we have all the sprites that we put in the game. We throw some interaction on it. We add a bunch of targets. Then we design the clues. Then we play test a lot. And then there's, of course, a lot more work on the game. And one thing I wanted to show you, because not a lot of people usually see these kinds of things, is interface, for instance. Hidden Folks has one interface, and yet it is a multi-platform game. It's going to be on Android very soon. It's already out on iOS, Linux, PC, Mac, Apple TV. So these are a lot of different kinds of interfaces. And in the case of Hidden Folks, we are using their UI tools, which are actually pretty good, I think. We use it as it's meant. There's only one interface, and it scales sort of based on the screen size and whatnot. It's sort of like suboptimal, but it works. You know, some buttons are enabled and disabled based on the platform, and it's dead simple, to be honest. And that's sort of like how we hacked it together, and based on that hack, we just continued to work on it and tried it on every platform and watched all those videos where people were like, oh, I wish I could turn off fucking vibration. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to add a button for vibration in the settings panel. And so, you know, that's the kind of stuff that's the way that we designed the interface. Very, very straightforward, only added what we thought we needed. And then there's also the part where not only are we trying to make a good game, trying to make Sylvain's world come alive, we are also trying to sort of bake in the marketing and business for this game inside the game. And one way we've done that is a very dull, do you like the game, yes or no? And if you do like it, would you care to rate it? Now this may sound very, very like aggressive, but it's actually not. And this is also the main reason that if you search for iTunes Hidden Folks, this is the main reason that we have so many reviews. This is a crazy number. And look at 5 stars. That's completely crazy. There's barely any games in the App Store to do this. And I really think that one of the reasons this is the case is because after the 3rd or 4th level, we put this screen here asking first, do you like the game? People can say yes or no. If they hit no, we'll just say, we'll have another screen which says, oh, you didn't like it? Maybe do you want to like email us some feedback? And you can either email us or say no thanks, I'll just continue playing the game. But when they do like it, they are asked, okay, well, do you also want to rate a game or not? And they can either rate it with, of course, a good rating because they already said they liked it, or they can say no thanks. This may sound like a dirty trick, but it's actually not, you know? So steal this from me. It works extremely well, but yeah, you get the point. So Hidden Folks was always meant as a game that we would continue working on. As a matter of fact, especially during that last sort of crunch, where in December we were working a lot of hours, 270 hours in total throughout, what was that? Throughout January, for instance, we realized, oh shit, we're not going to make it. We're not going to be able to make all the levels that we had in mind. And so we actually did something, I think, pretty clever. Instead of saying, oh, damn, we have to disappoint everyone now, we went into the level selection screen, and instead of that's not here right now. Instead of saying more areas soon or something, instead of not having the levels, we would say there will be more areas soon. And that sort of like looked like this. I want to show you guys this because this is actually very important and was very important to the marketing of the game as well. It showed you this. It says future in the little text below it. And when you click it, only the first time, it will bring you to a subscribe page again. Subscribe, which, of course, you will be able to enter your email address. And just to give you an idea of how many people do this, it's really incredible. Right now, there have been more than almost 16,000 people who have entered their email address that way. That is a lot of people, and they're all waiting for new content. And so I can just send them an email the moment that we release this content, and there will be, well, in this case, I think the email will only go to 10,500 people waiting for new content right now. That is the best marketing I could do. I can just send them an email directly and tell them, hey, there's something new, something cool for free. And actually, we've been. This was definitely part of the design of the game for me as well. Just not design of the fun of the game, but also design of the business and marketing around it. And there's some other things that we've done. Something that, for instance, took me one single day to implement, which was haptic feedback, which is on iPhones. You have this little vibrate, and it feels amazing. And if you implement it, Apple might feature you. So, one day of work, Apple feature, worth it. And so, if you think about more of these little things that you can design in your game and try to execute them well, see if it matches the design of your game, that can actually increase the chances of, also being able to do your marketing right. Okay, so we have the game. We implemented all the things so that we can also do business and that we can do marketing well. Then, of course, there's more to it. There's a trailer that you need to make. I already showed you a trailer. All the trailers are made by a girl. She actually works on the trailer for 2 whole weeks per trailer. So don't underestimate this. It's a lot of work. I might actually have one of the trailers on my desktop. Do I? Yes, here. Pretty cool. Oh God. Open Premiere during a presentation. Very bad idea. So we actually make a lot of versions of the trailer. We play test them. We make a rough setup. We put them in front of people. We see how they react to it, what they say, and we iterate based on that. So again, like playtesting is such an integral part of what we do. We don't really think that we know how to do it. We just try a lot of things, and we stick with the ones that work. So yeah, that's a thing. How many more minutes do I have? Is there anyone? Who do I? 5 more minutes, great. So yeah, are we actually going to look at this trailer thing? I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't have. Oh, I don't know what this means. Oh, okay, never mind. Jeez. Oh God. Okay, this was a bad idea, I admit. Okay, some other tools we've used that I think are interesting to see because, I don't know, people usually don't really show this kind of stuff, on stage. So I always find it pretty exciting to see, let me see your Slack or something. I don't know. I could get real excited about Trello. Oh, let's talk about Trello. So because everything is made by hand in Hidden Folks, we have to coordinate who works on what scene because you can't really easily merge 2 scenes, right? And so here, about an hour ago, Koala, who helps us a little bit with sound design, mixing the sounds mainly, said, oh, Snow Mountain, one of the scenes is available, so that and someone else can pick it up and start working on it. And here's someone who went to the Indie Big Awards. I don't know, whatever. This is pretty cool. So we have a channel in which we talk a lot about the game and about what's happening. And there's, of course, like the integrations, which is what makes Slack really great, which shows that there's something happening. For instance, someone committed some changes to something. There's a lot of Trello things in here. Now let's talk about Trello. Trello is really sort of like the backbone of this project by now, and I use it extensively, and I make every member that works on this, mainly me and Sylvain, but also some other people, use it extensively so that we know exactly where we're at and what people have to do. As you can see, there's a lot of ideas here, a lot of little to-do lists. The left thing is the thing we use most, and I don't know if you know Trello, but if you hit Q, it filters to all the tasks that are assigned to you. It's great. Highly recommend it. And so here's a bunch of things that I still have to work on when I get back home. First thing I'll work on back home, adjust the line path speed multiplier for skiers and snowboarders to be slightly more realistic. And it also says that it's in progress. And right now, Aaron, who's also working on this for me, says it's hard to get this look right. I'll have to think about this. So yes, this is like one of the backbones of this project, and this of course goes for everyone. And I go over this on a daily basis, reprioritize things, add things, confirm things to be removed, etc. So I don't know. This makes me very very excited. Is there maybe something else that people want to see, like tools, something you've always wanted to see, something in the back of something? Okay, I know what all of you are thinking, but nobody dares to ask. Okay, so I'm going to show you this, but just promise me that you'll just keep it among yourselves, okay? I do want to bring this into perspective. Normally, I don't show this kind of stuff at events. I want to bring this a little bit perspective. There's a lot of. I share the. Okay, let's just go see it. Okay, so this was the last week. It's been a good week. This thing thought I said, "Hey Siri," that's dumb. This is sort of like how the interface looks for a game that's successful. It's been doing really well. Yesterday, the Hidden Folks made almost 4,500 euros. That's great. It's mainly due to Apple featuring. Right now, Apple features are doing really well for Hidden Folks. I coordinate a lot with Apple about these kinds of features. So I can, for instance, now look for Johnny. Don't email him, please, for the love of God. So Johnny is my contact at Apple, and I occasionally tell him, hey, there's something new coming, and please take notice. Maybe there's a way that we can work together, collaborate on this. Maybe there's a way you can feature it. Maybe there's a promotional opportunities. I do this kind of stuff. Maybe it's interesting to know about this. And maybe you also notice that the emails are very short. These people have zero time, right? They have no time for anything whatsoever. So yeah, this definitely happens. This goes for all my emails. Check this out. This was one of the funnest, sort of like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just going to send an email to Steam saying that Hidden Folks is the best rated game on Steam. Wait, what? And then this email actually got me, this very simple, small email got me, if you open up Steam, there's always this like big image that pops up, It's pretty cool. Apparently it's called an IM. And I literally just, after Hidden Folks was released and did exceedingly well on Steam, just sort of like shotgunned everyone I maybe once met at GDC. And this was one of the guys. And I was like, hey, so if you sort Steam, if you sort all products in Steam by user review, Hidden Folks is on the first page, which is completely bizarre. But also, can I get one of those big banners? And that worked out really well.
Unfortunately, we are out of time, so can you wrap it up?
Whoa, yes, I can. Okay, let's see if that's still the case. What? I want to see Witcher. Here, look, we're still on the first page. That's incredible. So this gives me, of course, a little bit of leverage to actually ask for any of this. And this worked out. So like I said, I think if there's one takeaway from any of this that I've showed is that I have no idea what I'm doing. I just try a lot of things. And some of these things, they work, and some of these things, they don't. And I hope that is in any way maybe even a little bit inspiring. So if you have any questions, please come to me afterwards, all right? I'm happy to answer them. Cool, thanks.
Okay.